Good evening, Cambridge. It's Thursday. It's 8:30 o'clock, Channel 9, and I'm your friend.
Really quickly.
Oh my God, wait a minute.
2016.
Why it's going on every time? So, my name is Sasha, and welcome to Good Evening, Cambridge. I am extremely happy to be here in front of you tonight. We are talking politics, as Steve told already. I'm extremely excited because it's my 16th episode, and tonight we are talking about more presidential candidates 2016. So during the whole month, last month, we've been talking about all the presidential candidates 2016, and it's almost over. I mean, the list is almost over. Tonight is the last night when we're gonna talk about them, but the election will be next year, so we're probably gonna go back to the politics, maybe one or two or three or four or 100 more times in the future. But I was trying to be to treat them equal, so I chose the alphabetical order to talk about all the candidates. So last week, actually 2 weeks ago, because last week we had a CCTV barbecue, which when I was there, and I enjoyed it, and it was a lot of people, a lot of good food, so you should have joined us. Hope we're gonna see you next week, but let's go back to politics. Last week we get familiar with Martin O'Malley, Marco Rubio, and Bernie Sanders, and today we will continue to learn more about candidates. So there is 5 Democrats and 17 Republicans who have announced that they are running for the party's 2016 presidential nomination. And tonight I would like to start from Rick Santorum. He was a U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania in 1995 to 2007. He's well known for his 2012 presidential campaign, when he arguably finished second in the GOP primaries and won the Iowa caucuses. Santorum has been the CEO of Echo Light Studios since 2013, a film company that produces Christian films. He's the most famous for his very conservative position on social issues, like a ban on most abortions. So right now he's 58 years old, and he got a degree in political science from Penn State University, and he got his MBA from University of Pittsburgh, and he got his GD from Dickinson School of Law. And I have a video for you, so please take a look.
On what basis will you determine whether you're officially a candidate for the Republican presidential nomination? What's going to...
Oh, it'd be a whole bunch of different things. Yeah. Everything from, first and foremost, family. I mean, having gone through it once before, it takes a toll. I mean, you travel a lot, you're away a lot. I still have 4 kids at home, and it's a sacrifice for them. Believe it or not, they actually want to see me around every now and then, and have that relationship, and so that's a big thing for me. Having just done it and spent a lot of time on the road, and now I brought the family along a lot, but still it's not the same. And so that would be probably the biggest impediment at this point as to whether I think our family's really ready for that.
You said you'd do it differently too than if you were to do it.
Well, I try to raise a little bit more money than I raised last time. I
Still
really
got the sweater vest?
I didn't have the opportunity. No, probably not. I don't know.
No,
maybe try a new fashion statement this time. I was so successful with the last one, but I didn't have the opportunity to raise money last time. I mean, there was no one was going to give me any money. I mean, I lost my last race for the Senate by the largest margin of any incumbent senator in 30 years. So 4 years later, I announced for president.
The next logical move, yeah.
Right? And that's what you do next, right? I always thank John Bozeman from Arkansas for defeating Blanche Lambert by more than I lost, so I don't hold that record anymore. But, when I ran last time, who's going to give money to a guy who lost his last race by that margin and wasn't in elective office, didn't seem to have any kind of base of support, and so raising money was impossible almost. I think that's going to be a little different this time, but we still have to put a team together to do it, and that's not going to be easy with 57,000 candidates running for president.
Well, and on that basis, in that mix, you won 11 states last time.
I did.
Do you feel that among the Republican Party leaders, the establishment and others, you're getting the respect that you feel that comes with that? I think you have the 6th highest vote tally and state tally of somebody not to win the nomination in American politics.
One of the beauties the curses and beauties of my political career, you were talking earlier that I got elected at the age of 32.
To the House, yeah.
To the House, to the Congress. I've never run for office before. I ran for Congress at age 32 in a Democratic district. And the reason I was successful, one of the big reasons, is because everybody underestimated me. It's been the greatest gift. Every time I've won an election, the others say, oh, it's a fluke, the guy's a loser, he's stupid, he's this, he's that. I get this all the time. Just how dumb I am and how out of touch I am and how, how he doesn't know what he's doing, he's a fool. And then I keep winning and it just confound, that was just another mistake, it was just, fluke again. And so, and that's sort of where we are again. He just was there, right? He was the anti-Romney guy, that's the only reason he won. Meanwhile, there were 8 other anti-Romney guys, but nevertheless, that's sort of the way it is. Don't pay any attention to that man behind the curtain. And so that's an advantage for me because expectations are low, and so you can just sort of go about under the radar. Nobody's beating me up in the press because I'm not the favorite. There's an advantage. The disadvantage is nobody's talking about you. Nobody's saying you're going to win the nomination. And so the people that it hurts with is with the donor class who actually listen to what these idiots in Washington say is going to be, who's going to be the next president. They don't know any more than you do. But they get paid, so people listen to them. Nobody picked me to be second. None, not even close. So I look at that and say, I got my advantages and disadvantages like everybody else and take them as they come. Well, Senator Santorum, I want to thank you so much for making this a stop on your tour. We really appreciate your time. He owes me one for not showing up.
Well, here you come into Axelrod's home turf. I really appreciate this. I know all of us do as well, too. The book is called Blue Collar Conservatives Recommitting to an America That Works. There are signed copies out there as well for purchase. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, I will continue with the next candidate. You probably don't know him, but his name is Donald Trump. Trump is the son of Fred Trump, a wealthy real estate developer. Donald Trump is a successful businessman in his own right. Trump has flirted with the running in the past and appeared at multiple conservative political action conferences. His brash personality and wealth make him one of the most well-known figures in the country. Although he was a Republican before 1999, he was registered as a Democrat from 2001 till 2009, and previously supported universal health care. He was the host of the TV show called The Apprentice. It was an NBC show. So right now, Donald Trump is 70 years old, and he finished Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania in economics. Actually, I was thinking to make the whole show about him because I heard some rumors regarding his. So he had a couple buildings in New York, and there is quite a stories regarding about it, but I will not talk about it right now because it's not ready. Of course, it's a huge work I have to do to do it. But let's go back to Donald Trump and check out his interview. Here's a commercial. Of course, there is a commercial. Thank you, YouTube.
When did leaving work on time become an act of
25
courage?
seconds. Oh, wow. Alrighty.
It's time to take back our lives.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that project, but it's going to be kind of hard to track the people who are involved with that because probably, as I assume, not a lot of people want to be on TV, and I don't know why, but we have to talk about that. So
But
here
you
you go.
wrote that you were a liberal on healthcare and you supported a
Interview on
Canadian-style
CNN.
system where the government acts as an insurer.
Donald Trump
Is that
with
what you still
CNN.
believe in?
No, I looked at that. I looked at it very seriously. I do believe, and some people don't agree with me on this, I want everyone to have coverage. I do want people to have coverage. I think that a great forum could be, and I love the free market. I love the way it works, but we never had a free market. Even before Obamacare, it wasn't really free market. As an example, we're in New York right now, and when I wanted to bid out my health insurance and all sorts of things, we had boundaries. I could only go in New York. If I wanted to bid it out to a company from California, New Jersey, anywhere, I mean, and I was getting like, you get no bids.
But the single payer, no more. You're not interested in that.
No. I mean, and you know, there are different times, and over the years, you're going to change your attitudes. You're going to learn things, and you're going to change. And I've evolved on that issue. I've evolved on numerous issues.
Let me ask you about China, because as you may or may not know, this is a Trump tie.
Yes.
I bought it for this interview.
Oh, not only that, I mean, I buy a lot of stuff because
But as you know, they're made in China.
very beautiful tie, by the way.
It's a lovely tie.
Yeah.
It's made in China.
Correct.
Is it hypocritical at all for
No,
you to
not at
talk
all.
about this?
Not at all.
While you're manufacturing your clothes?
No, I'm building the old post office, and I just made an order from China because they've cut their currency to such. I'm a private person. I may not be a private person for long. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
Right.
I talk about my ties in speeches. You know, I'm open. I say my ties many times are made in China. Not all of them, by the way, but a lot of them are made in China because they've manipulated their currency to such a point that it's impossible for our companies to compete.
When it comes to outsourcing jobs, which is what this tie would be a representative issue of, one of the issues is that the people in China, the laborers, are paid a lot less, and the standards are worse when it comes to the environment and health care and worker safety.
Many problems. I agree with it.
Isn't that what? But what do you say when somebody says, "Well,
very hard to get 'em.
why don't you be a leader and make these in Philadelphia?" I'd be willing to pay more for this tie.
You would, and unfortunately, you would see that it's very, very hard to have anything in apparel made in this country. You know how much is made outside of the country?
Most of it,
and
but
now,
but some of them.
Vietnam,
Yeah.
so many other places. The problem,
American
and
apparel
just so
makes
you
stuff
understand, I know you bring that up, but I put ties in my speeches.
It just seems interesting because you dinged Ford for manufacturing their cars in
I do.
Mexico.
No, I don't ding them. I say, congratulations, I think it's a great deal, but I wouldn't let you do it. I wouldn't let them manipulate their currency because that's what they do.
Back in 2012, you tweeted, quote, "The concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese in order to make U.S. manufacturing non-competitive."
Well, of course I'm being sarcastic, you know. I mean, I love to do
That's
the
not to
Twitter
be taken
stuff.
seriously.
No, it's a little bit serious. There's a little bit of seriousness there. Look, we are restricting our factories much more than China. I go to China. They have factories that are much more competitive. I'm not saying friendly, but they're certainly not environmentally friendly. I'm a huge believer in clean air. I'm not a huge believer in the global warming phenomenon.
But the overwhelming majority of scientists say it's real and it's man-made and things are happening.
Oh, there could be some man-made too. I mean, I'm not saying there's zero, but not nearly to the extent. When Obama gets up and said it's the #1 problem of our country, and if it is, why is it that we have to do and clean up our factories now, and China doesn't have to do it for another 30 or 35 years in their wonderful agreement? You know, our wonderful negotiators. They have much smarter, much better negotiators than we do. It's really as simple as that. We don't have, and that's part of the reason I'm doing this, because you know,
you're the
well,
man that wrote The Art of the Deal.
I did write The Art of the Deal, in all fairness. And a lot of people, the administration hasn't read it, obviously. But we have horrible trade deals.
So you would tear up NAFTA, tear up the...
I think NAFTA's been a disaster. I think our current deals are a disaster. And I'm a free trader. The problem with free trade is you need smart people representing you. We have the greatest negotiators in the world, but we don't use them. We use political hacks and diplomats. We use the wrong people. Mexico is smart. They've outnegotiated us to a fare thee well. They're going to be the capital of automobiles pretty soon, the way they're going. I respect what they're doing. I think it's great. I like Mexico. I love the Mexican people. I do business with the Mexican people. But you have people coming through the border that are from all over, and they're bad. They're really bad. I've spoken to border guards, and I said, how bad is it? They said, Mr. Trump, you have no idea how bad. You have people coming in, and I'm not just saying Mexicans. I'm talking about people that are from all over that are killers and rapists. And, I mean, they're coming into this country.
Let me talk to you about that for 1 second. The government of Mexico called those comments prejudicial and absurd. And I think that what they're objecting to is the idea that of the 11 million undocumented workers, illegal immigrants, whatever you want to call them in this country, that you're painting them with a very broad brush, rapists, criminals, when that's probably a very small percentage.
Well, I don't think it's a small percentage, it's a lot, but it's not Mexicans necessarily. They're coming from all over.
You talked about building a wall and having Mexico pay for it.
Yeah.
How exactly are you going to get Mexico to pay for it?
Look, Mexico has not treated us well. Mexico treats us as though we are stupid people, which of course our leaders are. I don't blame Mexico. China's even worse.
But how do you force a country to build a wall?
You force them because we give Mexico a fortune. Mexico makes a fortune because of us. A wall is a tiny little peanut compared to the kind of money.
So you would cut off business or impose tariffs unless they built the wall?
I would do something very severe unless they contributed or gave us the money to build the wall. I'd build it. I'd build it very nicely. I'm very good at building things.
Can we talk about ISIS for 1 second?
Yes.
I think you said that you want to bomb the oil fields in Iraq
Yes.
to take on ISIS?
The only way you're going to beat them is that. You know why they're rich? Because they have the oil. Now, if you remember...
They have the oil in Syria, though.
They have some oil in Iraq.
There's a refinery that they're fighting with the Iraqis over.
They're fighting, and they're going to get it, fighting with Iraq. They're going to get it. One of the Iraqis will throw up their arms, they'll leave, and, you know, they have, it's just one of those
But
things.
I don't think the government of Iraq would want us to bomb their oil fields.
The government of Iraq, there is no government in Iraq. The so-called government of Iraq went to Iran to meet with Iran. Iran is going to take over Iraq. That's as simple as that, okay? As simple as that.
I don't know that Iraq, the government of Iraq, or whatever you want to call them, would support our bombing the oil fields in Iraq.
Who cares?
Okay.
I don't care about the government of Iraq. They're corrupt. The government of Iraq is totally corrupt. Who cares?
Let me ask you about a few social issues, just because
Okay.
they haven't been issues you've been talking about for several years. I know you're opposed to abortion.
Right. I'm pro-choice.
You're pro-choice or pro-life?
I'm pro-life, I'm sorry.
Pro-life. So how important is that issue to you now when President Trump picks Supreme Court justices? Would that be a litmus test?
It is. Look, you have a lot of pro-choice people out there, but that is an issue. It's very interesting because in terms of polling, the pro-choice is actually going down a little bit. You know, it's very interesting.
Let's talk about same-sex marriage. You said a few years ago that you were evolving on that issue. Where are you?
I'm traditional marriage. It is changing rapidly.
But what do you say to a lesbian who's married or a gay man who's married who says, Donald Trump, what's traditional about being married 3 times?
Well, they have a very good point. But, you know, I've been a very hard-working person. I have a great marriage. I have a great wife now. And my 2 wives were very good. And I don't blame them. But I was working, maybe like you, 22 hours a day.
I'm not asking you to explain your divorces.
No, I know.
But,
no, I'm just saying I blame myself because my business was so powerful for me. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
But what do you say to a lesbian or a gay man who are married and say...
I really don't say anything. I mean,
Okay.
Jake, I'm for traditional marriage.
Alrighty, let's continue. Let's talk about the last presidential candidates. The last on my list is, but not the last, in general, Jim Webb. Webb served just 1 term in the U.S. Senate, deciding against running for re-election in Virginia in 2012. Webb served in the Vietnam War with the Navy and was briefly Reagan's Secretary of the Navy. An outspoken critic of the Iraq War, he was opposed Obama's policies on the Middle East as well. As a candidate, Webb will be quick to criticize Clinton and Biden on defense policies. So as a Donald Trump, he's 70 years old, and he completed United States Naval Academy and got his GD degree from Georgetown University Law Center. Let's take a look. I'll show you a little bit of the video. As much we have time, because we have like 6 minutes left, even less.
Presidential contenders. Jim Webb has been a Marine Corps officer, Secretary of the Navy, and U.S. Senator from Virginia. The question is, can he mount a challenge to what will likely be a massive Hillary Clinton machine?
In 2016.
Conference.
Let's pass this
into
because
this
she's talking about
coronation.
Hillary Clinton,
Much
and
at all.
I want to
Exactly a blistering attack. So far, at least, Webb hasn't wanted to talk about Hillary Clinton much at all. Isn't the mere fact that you are considering running a sense that you're not buying into this coronation thing and that the party you feel needs alternatives?
Well, I've always been independent, making up my own mind and doing my best to stick to what I believe in. And I will continue to do that. I don't think that should surprise anyone. The question is, are there enough people who will understand that this is a kind of a different approach to how we should pick our national leadership?
You know, people are portraying it as David and Goliath here.
I've never paid attention to that. Even when I ran for the Senate, we ran against someone who was a long-time incumbent, and what I wanted to do was put the issues that I cared about in front of people to talk about where the country needs to go, and then just see what happens.
You said a few weeks ago, I'm quoting here, the Democratic Party has lost its way. What did you mean by that?
The people who have no voice in the corridors of power could always count on the Democratic Party to be talking about those issues, economic fairness issues particularly. And it's kind of up for grabs these days. I think the Democratic Party needs to get back on that message.
Webb says he's concerned that his party has steadily continued to lose more and more of the white working class vote.
If we want to really move to what we can call post-racial America, we can't do that if we end up with two political parties, one of which is comprised essentially of people of color and a small group of people who are categorized as white, and then another party that is basically white. We need to do that with an inclusive mix based on other conditions. And then we can say we've moved beyond racial America. My wife is from Asia. When I look at my wife, I don't see a person of color. I see the woman that I love. Our country called,
His other love, the military. As we walked in front of the Marine Corps Memorial showing 6 Americans hoisting a flag over Iwo Jima, Webb, a highly decorated Marine who served in Vietnam, told me he visits nearby Arlington National Cemetery once a week.
You can go walk by there and look at the names, and there are famous people and there are not so famous people, but every one of them has a story.
After leaving the military, Webb worked on Capitol Hill for the House Armed Services Committee and then in the Defense Department under President Ronald Reagan before becoming Reagan's Secretary of the Navy. He's written 10 books, including Fields of Fire and Born Fighting, and screenplays, including Rules of Engagement, which became a popular movie starring Tommy Lee Jones and Samuel L. Jackson. Webb ran for Senate in 2006 with little funding and few staff members against a heavily favored incumbent, Republican Senator George Allen. He ended up winning by a narrow margin. Webb retired after serving just one term in the U.S. Senate. Many analysts say there would be significant challenges for a Webb presidential candidacy.
Jim Webb is a very unconventional candidate. It's often said that he marches to his own drummer, and that's absolutely true. His advantages, obviously, are his wide experience and his bipartisan experience. The downside of Jim Webb is obvious. It's difficult to see how Jim Webb, who is not exactly a rabble-rouser, would be able to energize the base to overcome the odds and beat Hillary Clinton for the nomination.
On the issues, when you heard President Obama say that the ISIS was the JV team, what was your reaction?
We have an obligation to evaluate any of these threats to the United States in terms of whether this involves international terrorism, in which case we have the right, the President has the right to use force, or whether it is localized, in which case we need to have a discussion before we use force.
Is there an Obama doctrine, do you think?
The last really clear doctrine, in my view, was the Nixon doctrine that came out toward the end of the Vietnam War with Henry Kissinger and Nixon, working on a set of parameters that everyone understood in terms of how we would examine our foreign policy interests and how we would either use force or otherwise help our allies. And we haven't had one since the end of the Cold War. And this is how you end up with so many of these potential uses of force that don't seem to be connected by a strategy.
You voted for Obamacare. Would you be willing to make significant changes to Obamacare now, seeing how it's being implemented?
I was one of those who
unfortunately we don't have enough time to finish
in the White House
watching this video, and I will have to say goodbye to you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna say have a good night tonight, and I will see you next week, 8:30 as usual, Channel 9 CCTV. We will talk about something new next week, and I will make sure it's really interesting. Don't forget to follow me